Following the second phase of the lockdown on Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT, and the national address by the President Muhammad Buhari 2 days ago, it is now my duty to share a broader framework for the implementation of the President's directive here in Lagos State. But before I do that, let me reiterate some of the directives as outlined by Mr. President in his address. There will be an overnight curfew from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., except for essential services. This means that from the hours of 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., we will expect all Lagosians to stay in their homes from the 4th of May 2020. Furthermore, there is a ban on interstate travel by that time. This means that no persons will be allowed in or out of Lagos until further notice, except for those delivering essential goods, services, and by this we mean food items, petroleum products, newspapers and printing materials, and essential manufactured goods. According to Mr. President, a partial controlled interstate movement of goods and services will be allowed for the movement of goods and services from producers to consumers. Lagos State will very strictly implement this directive. As a first step, I'm directing that vehicles carrying food and agricultural produce into Lagos from any part of the country cannot have more than 7 passengers on board. The same applies when these vehicles are leaving the state. We are compelled to issue this directive because we have in recent times seen attempts to conceal people in trucks and other vehicles carrying essential items with the aim of sneaking in and out of the state. On our medical updates, before I fully outline the guidelines for easing and unlock Lagos, let me officially update you on the medical situation of our state. You know, Lagos continues to be the epicenter of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The total number of confirmed cases as at last midnight is 844, April 28. 143 persons have been treated and discharged, but I'm pleased to announce to you this afternoon that we're discharging a total of 49 people. Of these 49, 48 are Nigerians, and 1 is a foreigner, a Greek national. Of this, there are 28 female and 21 male. However, sadly, we have also lost 19 people, and we have currently an active case of about 682. I have also been on phone with our medical personnel who have contacted the coronavirus over the last week or so. I spoke with all of them this morning, and I'm pleased to say to you that they are all doing well and are very high spirits. We are looking forward to their discharge very, very soon. Our medical personnel will continue to be our top priority for all of us at this time, and will continue to make available all of the resources they require in terms of hazard allowance, COVID allowance, personal protective equipment. We're giving them psychosocial support and other needs as may arise. We are continuing our active case finding in communities around Lagos State. So far, we have covered over 1.5 million households, and we also continue to scale up isolation and treatment capacity. Isolation center in Bagada should be open tomorrow or latest next tomorrow, and we are currently working on building 3 additional isolation centers. Also going on our relief package distribution with the kind support of the private organization and the civil society. We are encouraging businesses in Lagos to commence the production of face masks as we roll out our new campaign to Mask Up Lagos. This is an opportunity for our people, especially the youth, to display their creativity and their artistic flair. The project and to project the cultural spirit of Lagos and Nigeria to the world. I will now go on to share the details of how the presidential directives on the gradual easing of the lockdown of Lagos will be implemented and enforced going forward. Within the public service, our public officers in the entire unified public service from grade 1 to grade 12 will remain and work from home unless otherwise directed by the accounting officer. For all in grades 13 and above, the accounting officer will carry out a need assessment of critical staff, identify the essential office, and draw up a flexible work roster in compliance with social distancing principle. The head of service will provide further details via a circular between now and Monday, 4th of May. None of these directives apply to essential service providers. These are people that are on our front line, which are the fire service and emergency response service. Malls, stores, and markets in Lagos. All open markets and stores will be allowed to open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on selected days. All market stores will be allowed to open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on selected days. We're working out a schedule with the Market Association and with the Ministry of Local Government to determine which market will work on which day and which other days you will not work. And that will be out before Monday to see the scheduling of the market. But in days where you are allowed to work, you will not work beyond 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they are meant to observe precautionary measures of social distancing at very high level of personal hygiene and hand hygiene. Malls also will be allowed to open, like I said, with a proviso that they will not have more than 60% occupancy at any given time, the maximum, whilst ensuring that a 2-meter distance is maintained between every person and the next in the store. Hand sanitizers and wash basin must be provided at the entry point, and temperature check must be carried out at each and every of these malls. Eateries and restaurants. Eateries and restaurants will also be allowed to open between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., but they shall only do takeaways. There will not be permitted any form of in-dining service whatsoever. All food handlers and staff of the eateries are expected to have gone through an extensive health check and must also practice high level of personal hygiene in serving members of the public. Food handlers are also mandated to wear face masks and hand gloves at all times, particularly when they are preparing and they are serving the food. Hand sanitizers and or wash basins must also be provided at the entry point, and temperature check must be carried out periodically throughout the period when these businesses are open. On our healthcare facility, we will continue to work with our medical establishment, and we'll continue to have a high index of suspicion of COVID-19. All suspected cases of COVID-19 must immediately be reported at the state helpline, which is 08000 267 662. Meaning that, like you have mentioned, our farmer is working with some of the health practitioners to designate some of the health institutions as COVID-19 hospitals. On education, all schools and institutions at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels will continue to remain physically closed. Students are expected to continue learning alternative online and media channels as announced by the various institutions of learning. Religious organizations, all places of worship, be it formal or informal, will remain closed from any form of congregational service or assemblage until further notice. Our Muslim brothers and sisters taking part in the Ramadan fast must observe their meal and prayers within their homes and in line with the pronouncement by the Nigerian Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs that no gathering for the iftar or the sahur or the tarawih or to conduct the tafsir prayers. They are all suspended. Because of the process of ablution, which involves touching of the face, it is essential that the hands are clean at all times, and therefore they must first proceed with washing their hands, very well with soap and water, like we did mention a couple of days ago. On transportation, the capacity of our public transportation system to reduce the risk of the contagion. The contagion will also be strengthened by a number of proactive measures we intend to take. And these are as follows. All commuters are mandated to wear face masks at all times, to sanitize with alcohol-based sanitizers, and to wash their hands with soap and running waters at every trip. All transport operators and companies are expected to sanitize their vehicles, their parks and garages regularly and continuously, at least before and after every trip. All transport operators and companies are expected to have at the entrances of their respective parks hand washing equipment with running water and temperature reader to test every passenger before boarding. All transport operators are expected to have alcohol-based sanitizers in their vehicles for their drivers, conductors, and their passengers. All motor parks and garages must avoid overcrowding. Social distancing is required for passengers queuing to board any of these buses. All buses should load to a maximum of 60% of their full capacity, meaning that if your capacity is 10 passengers, you cannot load more than 6 at any given time. No standing in all BRT and the Lagos bus service bus operation. All air conditioning systems in the public service, in all these public systems also must be switched off. All operators, drivers and conductors are also mandated to wear face masks and hand gloves while in transit and to dispose same appropriately. All of these guidelines as outlined, face mask, regular disinfection, hand washing, temperature check, maximum of 60% capacity shall comply with all transport systems and also water transportation operators. In addition, all the waterways transportation will be allowed to move from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily on the further notice. So they must close by 5 p.m. on water transportation. Commercial motorcycles, popularly known as Okadas, are to be suspended even after the partial lockdown because they cannot observe social distancing on this Okada. So they will still not be allowed as a means of transportation. However, the tricycle will be restricted to 2 passengers maximum if you need to operate at all within this time frame that has been slated. For offices and businesses, from May 4, 2020, businesses will be allowed to operate within a framework that is called a controlled easing phase. So what that means is that we do not want to shut down our entire economy, so we're expected to have a gradual easing of their businesses. It is a gradual and controlled easing of the lockdown. We'll continue to monitor with our public situation and we'll begin to check the economic impacts as always. Companies that choose to operate within this controlled easing environment would operate within the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. They're also directed to operate at the maximum of 60% of their staff capacity. At the maximum of 60% of their staff capacity. Let me also say that we want to encourage people to continue to work online and with their remote offices. Online and work from home arrangements are highly encouraged, and we encourage companies to continue to see how they get their staff, to work in this manner. We understand the importance that the banks and the financial institutions play in our economy, and for that reason, we'll expect that the banks will have more branches open, and we'll expect them to also keep to the 9 o'clock to 3 p.m. Working hours. Very important for me to mention that banks also must ensure that they have regular cleaning of their or decontamination of their ATM machine. They must ensure that do that every other hour, ensure that their ATM machines at their premises are cleaned and they are decontaminated regularly. For these institutions operating within the controlled ease phase, certain measures and directives must strictly adhere to. All buildings must ensure that they still keep a 2-meter distancing and maintain at all common area of their staff. Buildings, like I did mention, must maintain not more than 60% occupancy and not more than 50% elevator capacity in any building, meaning that we do not expect to have more than 50% in any elevator of any building whatsoever. Companies and businesses are also encouraged to make adequate arrangements for the transportation of their staff to their places of work to reduce the risk of contamination and issues of transmission at the public places. Companies transporting their staff to work and private transportation arrangements shall be expected to also adhere strictly to social distancing while we enjoin their staff to practice high level of hand and personal hygiene. Hand sanitizers and wash basins must be made available at all entry points, and temperature check must be made available upon entry into every of these work premises. We don't want to say that we're going to ensure that we'll set up a whistleblower to encourage reportage of the companies that flout these directives. Our whistleblower channel will be well thought out and will be communicated, in due course to the general public. The whistleblowers they will be protected and their identities will be kept secret and very confidential. But we must be verifiable incidents if you are reporting a company that is not complying with this directive. Entertainment centers. All entertainment centers such as event centers, cinemas, arcade, bars, casinos, day clubs, nightclubs, beaches will remain closed till further notice. Parks, pools, spas, gyms, and salons. Swimming pools, gyms, salons, beauty salons, including private ones in estate, will remain closed for another 2 weeks after the May 4th deadline, and we'll review all of these things after another 2 weeks, to review what is the level of compliance and what are the indices we're seeing before we can see if they might have some relaxation with all of these other businesses. And our elderly will continue to appeal that persons with underlying or pre-existing health conditions, they are encouraged to stay indoors at all times, however as practicable as possible. If you're an elderly 65 and above, if you don't need to go out, please do not go out. And if they need assistance, especially the vulnerable, they will ensure that they get one before they proceed outside. As regards funeral, and as I mentioned a couple of days ago, funerals are permitted, and I want to thank a few of the families, a few of the people that have started responding to our directive regarding funeral and others that are planning to do. And I want to say and reiterate again that the size for any funeral event should not exceed 20, including the officiating religious leaders. They should continue to maintain physical distancing at all times. All guests must leave from their home to the funeral and accompany themselves back home. There are no parties or no events after any of those funerals. I also want to mention that all of these directives will not be achieved. Tomorrow, 30th of April, I'll be inaugurating a committee that will comprise of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, who we consider as very important stakeholder, the Road Transport Employers Association, the RETEN, private transport operators, Nigerian Employers Consultative Assembly, which is the NECA, which is an umbrella for a large of the fast-moving consumer goods, the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, MAN, working with the Lagos State Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Lagos State Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget. We will be setting up a committee that will fashion out how the implementation of all of these directives would work out between now and Monday. Like I said, this committee will work out and fashion out the outlines and ensuring that the control easing of the lockdown so that there is full compliance, and we'll begin to see the successes, and we can measure it, on a weekly basis as we go forward. As I close, let me speedily thank everyone who has donated to the Lagos State COVID-19 response, by way of cash, medical equipment, and other essential food items. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. But on Friday, May 1st, the Lagos State government will acknowledge publicly all of our partners in national newspapers, and we will be publishing all their names and all the things they've given to us in the spirit of transparency and accountability. All of the people that have given us monies and goods items, they will be published nationally and also be placed on our website, the Lagos State government. Let us continue to remember that we are in an unprecedented times, which call for unprecedented responses. We have to adjust and adapt our behavior in a way that is painful and uncomfortable, including maximizing the use and the tool of technology as a means of indicating our life going forward. This also places upon us a duty to support our vulnerable, our health workers who are on the front line, and continue to encourage and wish them the very, very best. Some of them have been working with us for the past 3-4 weeks, and they've not seen their family, and we'll continue to wish them the very best. Like I did mention, some of our health workers that have also fallen prey of the positivity of COVID-19, I'm in touch with them, and they're very, very high spirits. We all must see this first adjustment as a small price for us to pay to guarantee victory of humanity in the days, the weeks, and the months ahead. And just for emphasis, from May the 4th, the curfew has been prescribed by Mr. President is from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I'm hoping and believing that as big as Lagos is, we will certainly be complying with this directive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll just open for questions and comments. Thank you.
My dear colleagues, we want to take all questions from 4 of us. So we'll be able to put all questions together within the 4 people. We'll take a summary of the variation in another language that we have. 4 persons.
My name is Adesemi Akinsanya. I'm here from Arise News. Mr. Governor, do you agree with the President's decision? Better? Can you hear me? Louder? Mr. Governor, do you agree with the President? He said there have been more active cases. Then can be easing lockdowns. I also put that question to the Health Commissioner, Professor Abayomi. Do you feel as though we've seen enough or any downward trend that would justify an easing of lockdown as we approach Monday?
Thank you. Good evening, Your Excellency. I want to ask, I'm Mary Alala Yusuf from Channels Television. I want to ask, you say you've gone through 1.5 million households. So my question is, how many households are left? And we know that the lockdown served was to your advantage in that you could quickly go to households to test and also move people to the isolation centers because the roads were free. So how is that going to work out with the rest of the testing that you have to do? Because there'll be more movement and more activity on the roads. Are you going to close the open markets, the markets you opened in empty school lots from May the 4th? And lastly,
are you closing or opening? What did you say?
The open markets,
okay.
The open markets in empty school lots will those markets be closed? Will there be no more use for those markets from May the 4th? Then finally, the restaurants. You said they're going to have some rules to follow, like wearing gloves when they serve. Is there any provision for teaching them how to use gloves? Because I see some people using gloves, and they use the same gloves all day long for everything. So I want to know how that's going to work. Thank you.
Good evening, Miss. Just to get a clarification, sir. My name is Joshua Bassi. I work with Business Day. I'd like to find out, sir, religious organizations, you talk about remaining closed. I just want to find out, sir, whether they are remaining closed or 20 attendees. Just clarification, sir. Thank you.
We have come to the end of the questions, so I want to believe we can take the language variation even after. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. The first question is from Arise. Do I think the directive of Mr. President to unlock is right? So if you, and that's why it's taken us a day and a half to analyze, the address in itself, and like you did mention, state governors also have the right to further give further directives. I think one of the biggest outcomes of his address is also the national curfew. We didn't have that up until now, and I think that is a major, bold move, by Mr. President. So one of the things he had said is unlock or relax. So as the chief executive of the state, so that's why I'm now making it a phased unlocking, right? We are the ones that are on ground. He has a national outlook, right? And based on the advice that has been given, you realize that we, even in Lagos, had started 2 weeks even before the 5 weeks or thereabout that we're engaging. And so in total, we're back to back, we're doing about 7 to 8 weeks now. And even with this, we fully agree with the curfew. In fact, it's one of the things we want to do. But it's at some point in time, and part of the things that all of you two have challenged us with is, at what point do we need to balance, the economy? A huge percentage of our people that are daily wage earners, right, to the virus in itself. So that's why we're not opening the lid. We're just trying to sort of like release it a little bit, let people know that we can just measure the movement outside. All of the pronouncement we've done here today is really not to have more than 50%, movement outside, and in a controlled manner.